friends. Welcome to the 5th episode of SJ Weekly. I don't know if this is coming out on Sunday or on Monday, because if you could not tell, I'm actually sick. If you watched my stream on Friday, you'll know that I was already starting to get sick that night, and today I called into work because I had a shift today on Saturday. I'm gonna try to edit it and put it out on Sunday, but I might just need some sleep or something. But anyway, let's get on to the SJW nonsense. First is an article from April 5th, 2018. Trump's most influential white nationalist troll is a Middlebury grad who lives in Manhattan. Who is Ricky Vaughn? That was one of the big questions for anyone following far-right politics during the 2016 presidential election. The Twitter troll, who took his name and avatar from Charlie Sheen's character in Major League, was everywhere on social media. An indefatigable circulator of edgy memes and rah-rah Donald Trump boosterism, and anti-Semitism and white nationalism. There was no mistaking Ricky Vaughn's influence. He had tens of thousands of followers, and his talent for blending far-right propaganda with conservative messages on Twitter made him a key disseminator of extremist views to Republican voters and a central figure in the alt-right white supremacist movement that attached itself to Trump's coattails. The MIT Media Lab named him to its list of top 150 influencers on the election, based on news appearance and social media impact. He finished ahead of NBC News, Drudge Report, and Stephen Colbert. Mainstream conservatives didn't know they were retweeting an avowed racist and anti-Semite, but they liked what Ricky Vaughn had to say. So basically the first half of this article is the Huffington Post whining that this guy, whom I honestly don't even know who he is, had a bigger social media reach than most of the mainstream news, which honestly is only going to continue to be the trend. Ricky Vaughn was able to remain anonymous until this week. On Monday, white nationalist Republican candidate Paul Nehlen, who is running against House Speaker Paul Ryan in Wisconsin, grew upset about criticism directed at him, and seemingly not disavowed by Ricky Vaughn, as the alt-right fragments under the weight of infighting, lawsuits, and anti-fascist opposition. I'm pretty sure that Antifa had nothing to do with this. It was probably the first two. Two main camps have emerged: the real-world extremists, who want to continue holding rallies and mixing it up in the streets, and the optics cucks, who think the best approach to the mainstream is to keep pushing alt-right ideas through better propaganda. Amid all this infighting, an angry Nehlen dropped Ricky Vaughn's real name. And I'm not going to keep scrolling down the article at this point, because this article basically exists to dox this guy. The first half of it is whining that he is more influence than Huffington Post or any other news outlet, and then the second half of it is just petty doxing. If I were to keep scrolling down, you would see his real name, popular misspellings of it, pictures of him on his various social media accounts, his job history, and I think where he currently lives. And in fact, I don't have the link for this, but wasn't there a situation a few months back where basically, was it CNN? Some big news outlet blackmailed somebody who was trolling or posting alt-right stuff online and said, "We're going to reveal your name and what we found out about you if you don't shut down your Twitter account," or so. I don't remember the complete story, but it was something along those lines. And that's basically what the mainstream media has turned into now. They've turned into a bunch of bullies. They're actually trying to act like mafiosos regarding the news, I guess, or regarding the flow of information, because they're realizing that the internet has completely taken away their power. But while we're on the subject of old media, here's a tweet from Glad Day Bookshop in Toronto, Canada, the oldest LGBTQ bookstore in the world, serving Toronto since 1970. Language evolves. Evolve yours. Let's see this propaganda. Instead of his or her, try theirs. Somebody left their phone on the table in the library. I hope they come back for it. See, I already say that. If I don't know a person's gender, I usually use the gender non-specific plural word, theirs. And it's nothing to do with Trans Awareness Week. It's just because it just seems grammatically correct, right? And I certainly don't need a fucking flyer to tell me to do it. Instead of guys, try folks. All of you folks are welcome in this space. What is it with SJWs using the word folk? Because I've always grown up thinking that folks is a like a rednecky term, you know? Like it's a situation where, you know, you have folk who sit on the front porch and strum their banjo, and that's the kind of feel I get from the word folk. But it's been used by SJWs so much that now whenever I see folk, I just think that somebody's probably a fucking regressive. But no, I use guys as a gender neutral term now, and I think it's rapidly becoming the gender neutral term for a group of people. Maybe they don't like that, but fuck it. Instead of the lady/man in the red shirt, try the person in the red shirt. I'd like to call upon the person in the red shirt to come join me on stage. Why? There's no reason to degender a signifier in most cases. Of course, there are going to be fringe cases where somebody looks like the gender they're not and they get insulted by it, and then you apologize and you say, "Listen, I'm sorry, I didn't know." But there's no reason to fucking police your own goddamn speech for the minority of cases. Instead of men or women, try everyone. These cozy winter outfits can be worn by everyone. Well, what if it's meant for a man or a woman? I mean, if it's a cozy winter outfit, you do realize that men and women have different cuts of clothing. You know, it's not even just a fashion thing. It's just that the clothing is cut differently because men have broader shoulders and women have wider hips. So sometimes clothing is actually made differently. So no, maybe this cozy winter outfit can't be worn by everyone. Maybe it can only be worn by women or by men. There are many good reasons to want only one of the two genders to be involved in any kind of particular situation. Sometimes it's not appropriate for everyone to be there. But yeah, they say language evolves, evolve yours. Well, that's the interesting thing, is that in terms of guys and folks, language is evolving, because guys at one point was not a gender neutral term and now it is. So language is evolving. You just don't like the way that it's you just don't like the way that it's evolving. So this isn't about language evolving. This is about a power grab. This is about you being able to police people's speech. And in fact, you can see this. Let's scroll down a bit. You got his or her or men and women is still being inclusive if you're talking about sex instead of gender. Guys is non-gender specific. No need to evolve language if you use it correctly. This is from Geeks Can Be Cool. And of course, this shop replies with, "Wow, it turns out geeks cannot, in fact, be cool." Of course. Of course. This is one step away from complaining about anime avatars or being a gamer. I'm bad about guys as a term for a group of folks, but I'm trying to get better. Y'all is also a great word for this. They're literally becoming rednecks. They're just rednecks now. Let's keep sticking to Twitter, though, because now we've got a thread from Mark Kern, otherwise known as Grums. For those of you who don't know, he worked on vanilla World of Warcraft back in the day, and then he, after leaving Blizzard, he went indie. He was a big part of Gamergate, and he also talks about politics, not just gaming, on his Twitter account, which is, you know, kind of the way things are going now, because I definitely started as an anime and games channel, and now I talk about politics. I think Gamergate helped bring a lot of people who were previously apolitical into the political sphere. Okay, let's talk about how to beat Trump, specifically how you could get me and millions of others back to voting for Democrats like I used to. First, you have to want me back. Stop being butthurt that I voted for Trump, and stop trying to get me punched, fired, or thrown out of restaurants. You need us back if you want to beat Trump. Stop pushing us into ditches. You'll lose again. Second, embrace free speech. You used to, and it opened a lot of doors for progressive values because we were free to express controversial ideas at the time, like LGBTQ rights. You would riot if speech was muzzled, and rightly so. Stop shadow banning and deplatforming. Next, stop campaigning on resist and impeach, and have a real message again. Hope was a powerful one for Obama and hooked me back then. You need to find a positive message to rally around a great vision for the future. Right now, your message is hate and fear and zero vision. Next, embrace middle America and our country again. You have a vision for what America should be, but stop saying America and middle America have to go. Make America's everyone's home. Be welcoming. Right now you just want to burn it all down. Not a good look. Fight for jobs for everyone. People want to work. And stop fetishizing tech. Not everyone can be a web programmer, and we need food and power and dirty jobs. Value hard work in blue-collar industries and help them too, and hold their jobs in the respect they are due. Fight for them. Finally, fight for equal rights and opportunity. But please stop trying to force everyone to live your way. Stop trying to criminalize every minor thing and get rid of political correctness. Learn to laugh again and embrace comedy as figurative, not literal. Leave fiction alone. It's about having a vision to build up America again instead of one focused on tearing it down. Evolve it, don't destroy it. Campaigning on he and his base are evil Nazis is just wrong and doesn't work. A lot of us used to vote for you and share your values. You don't have to do all this overnight, but just showing me and millions of others that you're willing to move in his direction would do a lot to get me to take a second look. Want to beat Trump? Take a page from your own speaking points and start to listen, for real. Now, if you didn't pay attention back on the 1st of July when this thread was initially posted, Grums got into a lot of trouble for this because he basically outlined a list of demands, and they're all reasonable demands, and I think most centrists who voted for Trump would agree with this list of demands. And this list basically describes why the moral grandstanding of the left is not enough by itself to get votes, and how somebody like Trump, and frankly, Trump is far from the perfect president, but how somebody like Trump was able to beat an establishment-backed candidate like Hillary with tons of money pouring into her. And it's because the middle of the country, the rational centrists, saw what happened between Hillary and Bernie and knew what Hillary was and said, never Hillary. You know, we would rather have Trump just to fucking stick it to you guys who think that you can rig elections with impunity. And that's what they did. And that's why we are where we are now. You could obviously blame Trump for what Trump does if you don't like it, but the reason we have Trump is basically because the Democrats became, and the left in general, has become megalomaniacal with all of this shit and needed to be taken down a peg or two, or 5, or 10. And since Trump's election, there's been this constant meltdown, this unending salt mine that's been uncovered on the left. And continuing to be salty is not the way to ensure that you guys get elected in 2020, or in 2022, or in 2024. It's not going to happen. And in fact, a lot of the replies that Mark Kurd got from the left show this. Let me try and find them here. Nobody owes you shit, asshole. If you're too dumb to make the right decision after what you've seen, you deserve what you get. You're definitely earning your verified checkmark today, buddy. You could stop demanding the party court you, take a good long look at what's happening in this country, and vote for the candidate who is better for the entire nation. Not because your feelings and ego are being stroked, but because it's the adult thing to do. Oh, it's the adult thing to do to vote the way that you want people to vote, right? If people have differing political opinions from you, I guess you simply consider them to be children, right? Maybe that's why people are not going to vote the way that you want them to vote, because you're an asshole. You voted for Trump, seeing the danger, racism, and hostility to people of color. You saw the blatant corruption. The math is easy. You're okay with racism, corruption, and fascism. We won't be taking you out for an ice cream cone to get your vote. The adults will handle this. Do you honestly think that Hillary wasn't racist? Do you honestly think that Hillary wasn't a warmonger? Do you honestly think that Hillary wasn't blatantly corrupt? And do you honestly think that your side is acting like adults when you've been doing nothing but melting down since 2016? We don't want you back. The fact that you voted for Trump and are seeing what he's doing and would consider voting for him again says all we need to know about you. Well, this is how you lose the election. You can't simply assume that 50% of your population, possibly more, are idiots, are immoral, are entirely without consideration, because that 50% is going to come along and fucking destroy you every time. I mean, this guy even fucking links an article that is the exact thing I'm talking about. The people are the problem. No, the people are not the problem. I can't believe you could even fucking think this. Until you meet my demands, I will happily continue voting for Trump, just to show you. This thread could not be any more disconnected from reality if it had read, I'll vote for you if you get me a pet unicorn. And then here's Marge at large. And where did you get the idea that we want to woo you back? Voting is a personal choice. You choose who you vote for. I will choose who I vote for. That's how it works. If you choose to vote for corruption, lies, and bully tactics, that's on you. Nothing you listed in this thread is a value of the Trump administration, and you voted for him anyway. So none of this is important to you. You don't get special treatment because you can't wake up and be part of the solution to heal this country. All of these replies are exactly what he's talking about, and all of these people are too fucking stupid to see it. Also, they think that Mark Kern's a white guy. He's Asian. But he's outlining a list of reasonable things that a politician on either side of the aisle has to provide if they're going to swing the centrist vote. And he's saying that the left is actively refusing to provide any of these things and instead is resorting to shame tactics in order to try to get people to vote for them. And in reply, all of these fucking replies are shame tactics. And speaking of a mob of SJWs coming after somebody, I have this article here from July 14th, 2018 called "I was the mob until the mob came for me." I drive food delivery for an online app to make rent and support myself and my young family. This is my new life. I once had a well-paid job in what would be described as the social justice industry. Then I upset the wrong person, and within a short window of time, I was considered too toxic for my employer's taste. I was publicly shamed, mobbed, and reduced to a symbol of male privilege. I was cast out of my career and my professional community. Writing anything under my own byline now would invite a renewal of this mobbing, which is why, with my editor's permission, I am writing this under a pseudonym. He knows who I am. Oh, it's almost like you now know what it felt like to be almost every single fucking indie dev during Gamergate. It's almost like you now know what it feels like to be anybody who supports any right wing or even any centrist position on Twitter nowadays. In my previous life, I was a self-righteous social justice crusader. I would use my mid-sized Twitter and Facebook platforms to signal my wokeness on topics such as LGBT rights, rape culture, and racial injustice. Most of the opinions I held then are still opinions that I hold today. But I now realize that my social media hyperactivity was, in reality, doing more harm than good. And based on the title, I presume it only took until the mob came after you for you to figure this out. Within the world created by the various apps I used, I got plenty of shares and retweets, but this masked how ineffective I had become outside in the real world. The only causes I was actually contributing to were the causes of mobbing and public shaming. Real change does not stem from these tactics. They only cause division, alienation, and bitterness. This is pretty much the exact thing that happened to Mark Kern in the previous story. And this is an SJW finally fucking realizing it. How did I become that person? It happened because it was exhilarating. Every time I would call someone racist or sexist, I would get a rush. That rush would then be reaffirmed and sustained by the stars, hearts, and thumbs up that constitute the nickels and dimes of social media validation. The people giving me these stars, hearts, and thumbs up were engaging in their own cynical game. A fear of being targeted by the mob induces us to signal publicly that we are part of it. I forget how that old quote goes, but it was something like people enjoy performing and then in turn having other people watch them perform rather than actually doing anything of substance. That is basically what social media has become. It's just become a giant circle jerk where people pat other people on the back and think that they're actually doing something about the world's ills. I know I've talked about this before several times in various videos, but I've lost many friends to this cycle. And, I talked about the D-pad in a few videos. I talked about that girl Casey in a few videos, but there's been others too. Like I'm gonna go show you this, right? I'm gonna start what we're doing and just go show you this. Here's Spoody's Twitter. We all know who this guy is. He's not really doing much of anything right now. He's replaying Final Fantasy X and tweeting about it, a game that he's already made fucking a 4-part review on, instead of actually making new content. And he hates this game, so I don't know why he's doing it. Maybe he thinks that his 12 social media likes are actually worth something. Maybe that's his paycheck now. But let's scroll down a bit, okay? Let's scroll down a bit. Takahata 101 says, I have written jokes I regret. I wish I could go back and not have made. Part of growing up. I have plenty of regrets about things like this, and everyone knows I've said some pretty shameful things. I think your intent at the time is the most important thing to consider. I know your goal was to hurt anyone. Most people will understand that. Really, Spoody, is that the case? So I know that during your Final Fantasy VIII review, you made an extended gay rant, and you're now very ashamed of it because you've gone full fucking SJW. But alternatively, maybe you and your ilk shouldn't be digging through the fucking Twitter feeds of people to find 10-year-old tweets. If this is going to be your logic, that if back then you thought it was okay and you didn't actually mean to hurt anybody, if back then that's the person that you were, then you should be left alone. How many fucking people have SJWs ruined because of shit they said a decade ago? I have plenty of regrets. Cue Final Fantasy VIII review gay rant. Yep, got it in one. I have no excuse for that one. I really don't know what I was thinking. Well, here's what you were thinking, Noah. You were not an SJW at the time. You were a mid-20s comedian on YouTube, a platform that hadn't really blown up yet, and you were one of the bigger people on it at the time. I mean, you're a fucking nobody at this point now, dude. And man, I spent many years looking up to you. And now you want to go back and like AstroTurf your more successful stuff to replace it with what? Because you're not fucking doing anything. You're just sitting around. You're tweeting about Trump all day. And man, you want to talk about? I guess I might as well just blow every old fucking friendship I had out of the water this time. But like, let's go to Black Light Attack. Black Light Attack was important because he was the first YouTuber to do a Nuzlocke Let's Play. Like a Nuzlocke run in Pokemon as a Let's Play, not just like a text thing or a comic. And for a while, his playthrough was number one. The number one search on YouTube for just Pokemon. You search Pokemon, you found his playthrough. That's how big that he was. And he invented 60-second Let's Plays, and he's done a lot of interesting things over the year. But here's what happened, all right? He was a regular guy. Look at him now, right? Look at him now. He was a regular guy. If I look it up, I mean he wore a cringy fucking fedora, but this was way back before fedoras had kind of fallen out of style, and he was a regular self-depreciating guy, right? And that's okay. But then he became this. You know, he moved out to the West Coast. He got a job at Twitch TV. As far as I know, he got fired from the job at Twitch. And then he went like full SJW. This is a guy that I used to love watching, and I have a lot of respect for him because he's made some really good stuff. But like after losing it at Twitch, he said he wanted to make it as a full-time Twitch streamer, and he barely streams. He streams like once a month, and then his Twitter feed is about social justice issues and talking about fucking Trump. And instead of streaming, he just spends his time talking about social justice and Trump, and that's what his entire Twitter feed is. He's basically gone the way of Spoody, and this really sucks because these are people that I used to like and I was friends with and I respect. And then you look at this article, right? We're back to the article. I was the mob until the mob came for me. This is the process of how that happens, all right? These people who are usually good people, they get sucked into this shit, okay? Most people in the SJW community, they're not bad people. They've just been manipulated and sucked in, and then they're kind of stuck there for a while, right? It's really only like the cult leaders that are actually the legitimately bad people. They have agendas. What's happening is that you have good people who are apolitical. They don't really know how politics works, and they see the world and they say, how can we fix this? And then the SJWs have the loudest voice right now, so they show up and they say, here's how we fix it, and then they get drawn in because they think, oh well, maybe I can do my part to help make other people's lives better. That is what most of these people think. They think they're doing something good, and then as soon as they realize that they're not doing something good, they're sucked in too far. And either they're threatened by their friend group, or they're threatened by other people, or they've built up an entire life around this shit, so it becomes too painful or too hard to rip it all down because it means destroying a good chunk of their sense of self and the way they live their life, and they get stuck there. I'm sorry about that side rant, guys. That was just me going off the rails a little bit. I apologize. Just a few years ago, many of my friends and peers who self-identify as liberals or progressives were open fans of provocative stand-up comedians such as Sarah Silverman and shows like South Park. Today, such material is seen as deeply problematic or even labeled as hate speech. I went from minding my own business when people told risque jokes to practically fainting when they used the wrong pronoun or expressed a right of center view. I went from making fun of the guy who took edgy jokes too seriously to becoming that guy. This is exactly what has happened to a lot of my old friends, and I've lost a lot of people to this stuff. And there are times when it just feels bad. I think, hey, maybe I should go back and like call that person up or email them or message them or tweet them or something and see how they are. And 9 times out of 10, because I'm a political centrist, they would hate me now. And often when I contact them, they say, "Oh, you hang out with Sargon, I hate you." When my callouts were met with approval and admiration, I was lavished with praise. "Thank you so much for speaking out. You're so brave. We need more men like you." Then one day, suddenly, I was accused of some of the very transgressions I'd called out in others. I was guilty, of course. There's no such thing as due process in the world. And once judgment has been rendered against you, the mob starts combing through your past looking for similar transgressions that might have been missed at the time. I was now told I had been creating a toxic environment for years at my workplace, that I had been making the space around me unsafe through microaggressions and macroaggressions alike. Well, you do reap what you sow in the end, don't you? Social justice is a surveillance culture, a snitch culture. The constant vigilance on the part of my colleagues and friends did me in. That's why I'm delivering sushi and pizza. Not that I'm complaining, it's honest work, and it's led me to rediscover how to interact with people in the real world. I am a kinder and more respectful person now that I'm not regularly on social media attacking people for not being kind and respectful. Let that be the message. If there's any SJW who happens to be watching this and you're just thinking I'm a complete fucking retard, let this paragraph be the only thing that actually penetrates your goddamn skull. This is what you are. And maybe this is why you hate honest work. Maybe this is why you hate blue-collar industries. Maybe this is why you hate the Midwest or your hometown. Maybe it's because you realize that actually being exposed to the real fucking world and actually talking to people is the one thing over anything else that will emotionally destroy the social justice barnacles that have grown over every single SJW. I mobbed and shamed people for incidents that became front page news, but when they were vindicated or exonerated by some real-world investigation, it was treated as a footnote by my online community. If someone survives a social justice callout, it simply means that the mob has moved on to someone new. No one ever apologizes for a false accusation, and everyone has a selective memory regarding what they've done. This honestly sounds a lot like what Zoe Quinn said Gamergate was, but it turns out that Zoe Quinn actively takes part in shit like this. Upon reading John Rodson's 2015 book, So You've Been Publicly Shamed, I recently went back into my Twitter archives to study my own behavior. I was shocked to discover that I'd actually participate quite enthusiastically in the public shaming of Justine Sacco, whose 2013 saga following a bad AIDS joke on Twitter forms one of the book's central case studies. My memory had told me different. In my mind, I didn't really participate. It was others who took things too far. In reality, the evidence showed that I was among the most vicious of Sacco's mobbers. Rodson describes a central problem with Twitter shaming. There is a disconnect between the severity of the crime and the gleeful savagery of the punishment. For years, I was blind to my own gleeful savagery. I'm sure we all have things that we did when we were young that we're not proud of. Social media allows us to go back and actually see those things without any alteration, because I can think of times when I was a kid that I did something pretty terrible, and there was no internet. So for me, it's just remembering things and being ashamed of them inside my own head. But now with Twitter, you can actually go back and see it. I recently had a dream that played out in the cartoon universe of my food delivery app, the dashboard software that guides my daily work life. The dream turned my workday drive into a third-person video game, with my cartoon car standing in for me as a protagonist. At some point, I started missing some of the streets, and the little line that marks my trail with blue pixels indicated where I had gone off-road. My path got erratic, and the dream became otherworldly, as dreams eventually do. I drove over cartoon sidewalks, through cartoon buildings and cartoon parks. It's a two-dimensional world in the app, so everything was flat. Through the unique logic of dreams, I survived all of this, all while picking up and dropping off deliveries and making money. In my dream, I was making progress. As my REM cycle intensified, my dream concluded. I was jolted from my two-dimensional app world and thrust back into the reality of the living world, where I could understand the suffering, carnage, and death I would have caused by my in-app actions. There were bodies strewn along the streets, screaming bystanders, destroyed lives, chaos. My car, by contrast, was indestructible while I was living in the app. Okay, this is a dream, man. You're fine. The social justice vigilantism I was living on Twitter and Facebook was like the app in my dream. Aggressive online virtue signaling is a fundamentally two-dimensional act. It has no human depth. It's only when we snap out of it, see the world as it really is, and people as they really are, that we can appreciate the destruction and human suffering we caused when we were trapped inside. Of course, the analogy rings true. Even though we can kind of tell that this guy did used to be an SJW writer, this sounds like something that Nathan Grayson would have written on Kotaku or something stupid, right? But at least this time he's actually talking about something that makes a modicum of sense. People have jokingly made SJW comparisons to the Borg or to zombies over the years, and I think that they're quite frankly right. These people get sucked into these groups, and then they kind of get, it's a little bit shaming, it's a little bit of a power rush, it's a little bit being chastised and then having the ability to chastise others. There's a definite power structure to it, and a constant checking and rechecking of everyone around you, and having yourself checked by everybody around you as well. And these people, they get stuck in it. 50% of it is that they're scared to leave, and 50% of it is that they enjoy the power rush of temporarily being the inquisitor when it's not their turn to be labeled the oppressor. And that's why you get a lot of decent people who get sucked into this stuff. That's why you could see creators who made amazing things 8 or 10 years ago, like Spoody, like Black Light Attack, like so many other people. They vanish into this fucking black hole, this interdimensional pit of fucking emotional nothingness. It's not just that these SJWs hurt other people, though they do. They also hurt themselves. When is the last time you've actually found a happy SJW? An SJW who is actually happy with their body or their life or their relationships or something. How many of them have good relationships with their families or with their parents? I mean, of course, there are definitely many instances where you should not have a relationship with your parents because you have legitimately abusive parents. I know people who are like that. However, there's so many times when I hear about people who don't like their parents, and it's simply because it's their parents, and they don't like authority. And they still can't get over that when they were 8 or 9, they got spanked because they did something horrendously awful as a kid. And now they're 30 or they're 35, and they're still like, fuck the man. How many fat activists do you think actually like their body or are actually healthy or happy at any size? How much of that shit do you think is just them participating in a grand illusion and demanding the rest of society also prop up this grand illusion along with them, just so that they don't have to confront the fact that they eat too much and they don't do enough exercise? This is mainly why I've gone from hating SJWs to feeling immensely sorry for them. They might cause some damage to other people. There might be online mobs. There might be other things like that. There might be, they might take over shows like She-Ra or Thundercats, or they might ruin comics or Magic the Gathering or video games. There's a lot of things that they do that are terrible that affect other people, but it's all because they hate themselves. They don't have any happiness in their lives, and that's the core of it. This is what this person who wrote this article has finally realized. I've been thinking of a video topic now for at least 6 months, maybe longer. It's supposed to be like a self-help for SJWs. Things have only gotten worse regarding this stuff, both in terms of SJWs in general and also on a personal level with me. I might make that the next video I do, because I think it's actually important.